Microsoft is getting into the AI chip business plus a rebranding of Bing Chat. Welcome back to the AI Breakdown. Today, we are talking about all of the big announcements from Microsoft Ignite. That includes Microsoft rebranding Bing Chat, talking about partnerships with NVIDIA and other AI startups, and of course, maybe the biggest thing, confirmation that the company has indeed been working on custom silicon. Yes, Microsoft is releasing their own chips, and they are definitely focused on artificial intelligence. Now, we have heard for months about a project that was reportedly codenamed called Athena. This was meant to be a push into the AI chip space, and of course made sense in the context of just how much Microsoft is doing with AI, as well as how much need there is for these customized chips from other customers. So first up, the biggest announcement from this event was the announcement of chips, and there were actually two. The one that we had been anticipating was called the Maia AI Accelerator. As Gary Explains writes, it's designed and optimized for artificial tasks and generative AI, and has 105 billion transistors and is built on 5 nanometers. Now, giving some more technical details, Patrick Moorhead writes, racks are liquid cooled, 4x per server, ASIC not a GPU, which was expected, no cluster or model size limits, Ethernet connectivity embedded, and meant to power Microsoft Copilot or Azure OpenAI service. Now, they also introduced a second chip called the Cobalt CPU, which was an ARM-based chip for general purpose computing. Moorhead writes, this announcement on the custom silicon was more than I had imagined. Overall, I was very impressed and didn't expect this all at once. Now, Moorhead also said, you have to assume today's and next generation's OpenAI models will be trained and inferenced on Maia. Sam Altman says this was a co-collaboration to produce more capable and cheaper models. SemiAnalysis writes, Microsoft is currently conducting the largest infrastructure build-out that humanity has ever seen. While that may seem like hyperbole, look at the annual spend of mega projects such as nationwide rail networks, dams, or even space programs such as the Apollo moon landings, and they all pale in comparison to the more than $50 billion annual spend on data centers Microsoft has penned for 2024 and beyond. This infrastructure build-out is aimed squarely at accelerating the path to AGI and bringing the intelligence of generative AI to every facet of life, from productivity applications to leisure. Now, this is a really extensive piece, one that I will link to in the show notes, but there are a couple parts of it that I wanted to call out specifically in the context of this video. One point that SemiAnalysis makes is that, as they put it, Microsoft is currently behind on deploying custom silicon in their data centers relative to Google and Amazon. At the same time, however, SemiAnalysis writes they have a long history of silicon projects. Now, when it comes to how Microsoft's Maia 100 compares to chips from Amazon, Google, and Meta, they say Maia 100 isn't a slouch. Now, to me, the most interesting thing is certainly the fact that we are now operating in a world where Amazon, Google, Meta, and Microsoft are all building their own chips, and not only for their own purposes, but also lining up partners in the big AI labs like OpenAI, of course, and also Anthropic, to be customers of and co-developers on those projects. However, lest you think that this means that they are all racing away from NVIDIA right away, NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang actually was on stage with Microsoft's Satya Nadella yesterday talking about their partnership and how they were even expanding it. The Bend Bytes newsletter summed up what NVIDIA announced as 1. NVIDIA Foundation models, a new family of foundation models, Nemotron 3.8B with chat and QA variants. 2. NVIDIA announced an AI Foundry service that gives enterprises an end-to-end solution for creating and optimizing custom generative AI models. 3. Azure Cloud offering new NVIDIA GPU virtual machines, and a couple of other announcements as well. Basically, the TLDR is that even as these companies are trying to break their over-reliance on NVIDIA, that doesn't mean that they're trying to get out of that relationship entirely. It also shows the extent to which, especially at the upper echelons of this space, everyone is friend, competitor, and frenemy all at once. Now, like I said, this hardware wasn't the only thing that Microsoft announced. There was also a set of conversations about foundation models. Of course, one piece of that is that all the models that were announced at OpenAI's Dev Day are now available to enterprise customers through Azure, but there's also a new Models as a Service offering on Azure where customers can fine-tune with Llama 2, Mistral, or other options. They also announced Phi 2, which is Microsoft's new dedicated LLM, and announced that it would be totally open source. Highlights from the presentation were that it was, quote, much more robust than Phi 1.5, that it was 50% better at mathematical reasoning, and that it was designed to be ideal for fine-tuning. However, in addition to all of the announcements for the enterprise, there were also a lot of announcements that were relevant for end consumers as well. The TLDR is that all consumer AI is coming together under the Microsoft brand of Copilot. So for example, that means no more Bing Chat, nor will there be any more Bing Chat Enterprise. All of that simply becomes Copilot. Now, when it comes to Bing Chat specifically, in addition to a free version of Copilot still being accessible through Bing and through Windows, it'll also have its own dedicated domain at copilot.microsoft.com, similar to ChatGPT. Now, interestingly, I've seen a lot of reporting pitching this as a way to compete more directly with OpenAI, and certainly I think that's a part of it. Again, this gets into that frenemy territory that we've talked about frequently on this show, where just because they're working with OpenAI and just because OpenAI is working with Microsoft doesn't mean they're not still trying to beat each other when it comes to some of the fundamentals. However, more than that, this just seems like a strategic evolution, where they're consolidating a set of various tools that are all sort of related to one another under a banner and framework, and more specifically a brand that they can go out and push and build consumer awareness around. Now, personally, I never found the arguments for why they stuck with Bing particularly compelling. Previously, Yusuf Mehdi, the CMO of consumer at Microsoft, had said when it comes to Bing, it's a neutral vessel, so all the research from the branding team shows that people are basically neutral on Bing, which is generally a good thing. Mehdi said that awareness of the Bing brand was worth around $200 million, so, quote, we said, do we want to start from scratch or build on that? It has all these positive things, it's 4 letters, it has 1 syllable, it's global, and it has equity. So we're going to stick with the Bing brand. I get that on one hand, but it's also a hyper-conservative position to take in what is going to be one of the most significant brand competitions in the world around which generative AI tools consumers use to bridge into the new world that's coming. I think that the other thing that the Copilot branding shift does from a consumer perception perspective is that it ties together a set of disparate experiences as something that are all inherently linked. In other words, instead of there being lots and lots of different Microsoft-curated AI experiences across the apps that people already know and use, there is a new mental framework, a shift that people are undergoing, that reinforces that this isn't just a set of small changes, but it's something bigger and much more fundamental than that. That's what having a single common brand helps reinforce. Now, some people aren't hot on the name. Brian Romley writes, this is a regrettable misunderstanding of how AI will play out, although he doesn't elaborate on why exactly he doesn't like that Copilot terminology. If I had to guess, I would say that it doesn't create a lot of space for the agentic future in which AI bots aren't just co-piloting but are actually piloting entirely on their own, but who knows? Now, I think in many ways, the other part of the announcements from this event that are notable to me is just the sheer quantity of them. As I was preparing for this video, I kept seeing more other companies that were talking about their partnership with Microsoft that was just announced, such as this tweet from Langchain. They write, today we're thrilled to announce our collaboration with Azure. Our joint customers will enjoy deeper product integrations that live up to our commitment to AI with the enterprise assurances that Azure ecosystems provide. Now, zooming out a little bit in terms of where the state of the big tech competition is, one of the things that has been notable to some is how much more willing Microsoft has seemed to actually go out and try to implement AI tools quickly, as opposed to, for example, Google. Professor Ethan Malik shared a set of charts and said, a lot of the questions about why Google is reluctant to deploy AI systems and Microsoft is not is answered by these 2 charts. Advertising is everything to Google, and it's not clear how to integrate LLMs and ads. Microsoft does a lot of things that LLMs help. The 2 charts are revenue breakdowns and shows that Google's advertising properties make up 69% of its revenue, whereas, for example, when it comes to Microsoft's revenue, 31.3% of it is around Microsoft Azure, 23.7% is around Office products and cloud services, 14% is around Windows, and only 5.1% is around search ads. Point being that to the extent that you think that there is a question of how LLMs are going to interact with advertising, there is perhaps less of a question of how all of these enterprise products are going to be able to start integrating generative AI features. Still, I'm not totally sold on the explanation. I think there are some fairly obvious ways that AI is going to impact advertising, and it feels like every other week or so that we get some announcement from one of the Alphabet-owned companies like YouTube around how AI is going into those advertising products. What's more, Meta is similarly or even more concentrated in advertising, and yet has been an aggressive pusher when it comes to AI. So, who knows? What is for sure is that Microsoft is not slowing down at all and is continuing to push to be at the very, very top of the generative AI heap. That's going to do it for today's AI Breakdown. I appreciate you guys listening or watching as always. And until next time, peace